Hey, Brian.
Oh, I believe I was on the second counter shown with alcohol on it. It had medication on it too.
Mm-hmm.
On the right side of it was a book with Plato on the
Mm-hmm.
spine.
Wow, you're observant.
I wasn't there.
That's nice that you pay attention to those details because this is such a simple, spare film that I wanted to allow the viewer, if they got into these things, to to recognize it. Because the character Bill, I wanted to be kind of a complex character, really. I mean, I wanted him to have a lot of layers to who he was, and so on one end, it was because of that. I wanted him to be someone who was like well-rounded and educated into basics of philosophy and whatnot, but also had this troubled past and retired vet and post-traumatic stress disorder and those kind of things as well. But there's also references, to the Parthenon and Athena and other aspects of Greece, and which was kind of one of the, original big empires after Egypt, that kind of thing.
So like a Greek motif might sort of talk about like military imperialism or something like that?
That and just, in general, not just military, but our, empires that, we're now our modern day empire, so to speak, that's that kind of is embodied in this character for me. He's like this, fallen hero that's impotent.
What inspired the both stories, the short and the kind of what gave you the idea for them?
The short, The Dirty Ones, was actually a feature script that I'd written. I'd tried for years to get funding for, and anyway, the producers that I was working with trying to get that funded, we said, well, maybe if we make a short, it'll enable us to gather the funding needed to make the feature. So it was the reverse process in that I had written a feature, but then had to go back and somehow adapt that to a short form, which is how that story came about. I originally got interested in Mennonites, which is what these sisters were representing, or were in the story, because I was initially doing this documentary on this homeless Mennonite lady that I'd come across where I live in Nashville, and I became fascinated by just the aspects of how primitive and their culture is, and their belief system, but yet trying to exist in our modern culture, our contemporary consumer culture, and they totally resist all of that. So I like that dynamic, and I got interested and started researching more about them and that kind of thing. And then I, kind of pulled some Faulkner into the story of as I lay dying with the grandmother being carried along the way through the story. It was just interesting to me to tackle that as a story and as a culture, and how they're kind of like aliens in a way, like having to exist outside of our norms. But and then the Colonel's Bride was a story that I just wanted to. I was trying to find the most simple, basic form to tell a story about two people coming from very different places, and trying to confront their own fears and desires and whatnot. Her coming from Vietnam and wanting a new place to be, and him trying to make amends for this past that he had to deal with. So I I was just, and again, I was drawn to the simplicity of it. This was a film made with very, very little finances, and so I wanted to see what I could do with like a chamber drama of just like two people in a house kind of thing. So that story seemed to fit what I was going for with that form. I wanted to pare everything down to basics, see if I could pull it off, like go back to just really basic structure and form of storytelling. I was with that feature script, I was in Cinemart back in 2007, which is a big thing that Rotterdam Film Festival does, and all these producers from all over the world come and they meet you, and it's like speed dating. You pitch your project every 30 minutes for like 5 days. And because I was American, I couldn't get funding. If I made it in Belgium, if I made it in Canada, they're like, yeah, come make your project there. We'll help you get government subsidy to do it. But here it's just, unless you're playing the game in Hollywood or I don't know, or have certain resources, I think it's really difficult to get the kind of funding at this level. So, yeah, but I would definitely do it someday if I could. I was working on a commercial for Liberty Mutual that he was in, and I met him there, and he was also living where I live in Nashville, and I saw his potential for this story. So right then and there on set, I pitched this story I'd written. I'd written a treatment about 3 years ago, but I knew to pull it off, I had to have a very strong, solid actor that would be willing to work for free and do the shoot. So he was into it. He agreed to do it. So I immediately finished the script as soon as I could, because I knew I had to work on that momentum to keep him in the project. And then Alicia, the girl, she is Vietnamese, but has lived in the States probably 13 years, which she was a nail technician and didn't know a thing about film or working in movies or any of that by that nature. But we tried to approach the Vietnamese community and see who might be interested in doing this type of thing. And she worked out great. I mean, she jumped right into that character right away. And she actually had friends that had gone through similar circumstances, so she kind of understood that character. It was easy to kind of direct her. And then JD, he also knew that character because he was a Vietnam vet, and there's a lot of the traits of that character that he already kind of embodied or was familiar with. He doesn't like to go word by word on the script, which I'm fine with, but so he was a little more loose than she was in terms of her main thing was just being able to react and be kind of reactive to him because of she didn't have many lines, but she had to just she had to until the end, until she became kind of more the main character by the end. But it was important for me to try to show both her side as well, so it wasn't just all about him, So by the end, it was important for me to try to feel like you were somehow attached to her side as well, to what she was dealing with.
On your short film, how does the segment that makes up the short film relate to the feature film project that you had in mind?
Yeah, the segment of the short film, I basically took the one out of the whole scope of the story. This is simply where their truck breaks down as they're en route to bury their grandmother who's in the truck. So I just simply am showing just that one little slice out of the full story where the truck breaks down and they're trying to find a place to stay. And so that's a very small little piece of the whole story of the original script.
I'm curious about the title,
The Dirty Ones, yeah. Yeah, I like the ambiguity, I think, of it, and that you could kind of go different ways with it. Like who really are the dirty ones, and what is that, and is it them? Is it the culture? Is it the other people that are there? I like that. I'm not going to say who they are, but I think I like the ambiguity of that title. Yes.
If you'd made the whole feature, would you have told the story in a similarly non-linear way to Faulkner?
No, the story. I mean, that's a good question, but no, I come more from like a fine art background, so I've had to finally get to where I'm okay, like telling narrative in kind of a linear way. So no, the original story would still be, would not be like Faulkner did and how he breaks up the narrative. It was very much in a very straightforward A to B linear form.
Your goals now, are you working on another project or trying to get the dirty ones made into a feature, or what's your...
Well, my goals now are I have other projects that I also produce other films with the company that we did this one with. I have another feature I'd like to make, but again, it has to do with financing. I wish that films weren't so bogged down in financing. I wish there was a way to, and maybe we're finally getting away from that eventually, but they're so cumbersome in terms of the scope and the scale and all the people that are involved to make these things. That hangs up a lot of projects. So yeah, I definitely I've written 2 other scripts that I've been trying to get funded for probably the last 4 years. And that's again why I made this, because I knew I could pull it off because it's so simple, So we'll see. There's definitely other projects in the works, but it's simply about getting the access to funding.
I guess I talked about it last night, but I was kind of hoping to talk about it further now that I've seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The choice of the set shots last night we kind of talked about, some of it was based off of the amount of film that the fetus and Lincoln had.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit more now about like the struggle of just like as an artist just choosing to set the camera,
Mm-hmm.
and how you guys worked through that?
Well, I worked with an amazing director of photography, Neil Lisk. He's actually based out of LA, but he flew out to Nashville, and we were there for 2 weeks shooting. And he was we had a very good collaboration. We talked for like a week before the shoot and every shot or every scene, and breaking down basically how we wanted to shoot it. Because we understood the challenge we were coming up against, and that the camera was static, wouldn't pan, wouldn't move. Came up with the very end shot that we're gonna dolly in at the very last shot. So it was very much planned out. We knew we had to, because we were on such a tight schedule, very limited amount of film. Everything was down, reduced down to very limited things. And 2, I come from a photography background as well, so for me it was very specific how compositions and all of that worked as well. And some people will criticize it that it's too photography, too beautiful photography, or too concerned about that kind of thing. But for me, that was important, and especially to be as simple as it was. I wanted all those things to be considered. It's funny because we were actually talking about this last night. The Dirty Ones was shot with the red, so, and the Colonel was 35. I just felt there's something about the tone of the film that I felt was important to keep at least the origination on film. Just that way the light and the texture and all that kind of stuff was. And it's so simple, and I wanted all those things to add add to the depth of the piece. But overall, I mean, digital is getting so resolved that I really think it depends on the project. It depends on what what the context of the piece is. I mean, I've definitely used digital. I would use it again. I'm trying to get away from being that concerned either way about it. We were talking about that last night, is that, I have friends that have no concerns about it at all. It's just not a big deal. It's about what's the pic, what are you doing with your content? What's the story, or what's the, don't worry about but I think all those things do affect the work, depending on what you're trying to do. So I don't have a solid position either way. I started with film. That's my roots are all in film. But I'll still use digital, We flew on the plane together. She showed up. That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.